This is the Midway Business Podcast. Inspired by the turning point of the Battle of Midway, Butch Zemar, CEO of Elite Benefits of America, is on a mission to help small and mid-sized businesses win their own battles. And now, Butch Zemar.
Well, welcome to the show. I have John Andrade, if I can get that right. I'll keep practicing.
I love it.
Yeah, and I appreciate you taking time to join us. We're going to talk about entrepreneurship, business, and CEOs and running a company. So thanks for taking the time.
Super excited. Really cool setup here, and it's been a pleasure. I just interviewed one of your buddies, Alan, that I guess is going to be on your show too. Man, this community is really booming. I think in the Chicagoland area, I think we're all kind of, what they say, right? City of big shoulders. We all try to lift each other up, and it's neat to, collaborate. So. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, if you don't mind, give our audience a little background on who you are and what you've done and where you're at today. Who I am. All right. Well, only child, adopted, came from my birth mother's Colombian, fully. And then my birth father was Puerto Rican, but I never knew him. And then there's some Italian, some other craziness in there. I came from humble beginnings, right? Kind of Melrose Park, Bensonville area, very entrepreneurial. My uncle in Colombia, we went to go visit him probably when I was 5 years old. And I just realized he was living different than we were, right? We had a little condo in Bensonville, Illinois, and then Norridge and other places. And then all of a sudden we went to Colombia. And by the second or third time, I was like, he's got maids and people cooking for him, and he's just living differently. And my cousins, nice cars and all that good stuff. And I just saw something different. I saw the way he also commanded respect, the way he would walk into his business. In Spanish it's called Don, like Mister, right? So Don Enrique, and people would always be so excited to see him, and gracious and stuff. And he was always very humble, but he had a presence, right? So, and my adoptive father was a steel worker at a place called Castle Meadows in Franklin Park. So that's who kind of with my mom raised me. But yeah, man, entrepreneurial. I love the stories. I love being able to kind of see from even a macro to a micro perspective. And coming out with a new book soon. So
that's awesome. We're going to get to that too. Yeah, and you even dove into the entrepreneur. You had, when I was looking things up, you had 2 entrepreneurship stakes in the ground, and you kind of moved on. So I guess give a little background on how you got there, not necessarily about the business if you want to dive into that, but how'd you get, what helped you, get the startup going, and then obviously the exit.
Yeah, so 3 industries. The first one, so I had a full ride opportunity for soccer in D1. Went out there first semester, tore my knee up, came back, did the in love thing, and then all of a sudden met a gentleman named Chris. I tell it in the story of the book that read an ad at a college where my mom was an administrative person there, just a clerical person, and an ad said, join Cool Bear Enterprises. So I got my first start in telecommunications, so selling long distance service, which is long gone. But local line service, long distance, all that type of stuff, and got to learn that industry, and then went on my own. Had some failure in that. Turned that into a Nextel business.
They're called tuition payments.
Yeah, tuition payments, exactly. Yeah. I like that. So Nextel Phones was kind of the distributorship that I started. Had a few retail stores. Some challenges with that. Didn't know a lot of things about business at 19, 20, 21. So I had some failure. Turned that into, a few years later, a company called theautogenie.com. I was trying to be a State Farm agent, but the Auto Genie became an insight that I had in 2003, where a client of mine had an automotive place right on Western Avenue in Chicago, Illinois, and he was just doing mechanic shop stuff. But he always wanted to have an automobile business. And I said to him, hey, what do you think about selling cars online? I don't want to have a brick and mortar, lot with 30, 50, 100 cars, because that's a lot of expense to me. I want to have this thing called the internet can do, which is everything online. So we started a company called theautogenie.com, built it to 2009. So I started in 2004, built to 2009, sold it right after the economic crash. Probably scared out of my mind is why I sold it back, because I didn't know if I could survive. It was a hard time economically for a lot of people. And cars, what we were doing, 60, 70 cars a month, went down to like, 3. So it was hard to survive. But from that, sold my portion to my partner. He wanted to go brick and mortar by that time. So we kind of had differing opinions of what to do next. And the pivot went into commercial and business banking. So I always say I went from entrepreneur to banker. That's kind of my story of business and entrepreneurship. So
yeah, well, definitely an awesome background, and that background gives you a lot of insight to your current clients, and also when you're in the banking world. And so I assume you're able to maybe do some consulting with businesses that are trying to get loans or trying to get a startup, put a stake in the ground, maybe revamping buildings. You do a lot of videos. You did a video the other day about doing some TLC on a building, and you're like, it's fine. It all works out in the end. Sometimes it is better to do certain things. So talk about a little bit about working with clients and bringing that entrepreneurship to the table there.
Yeah, I mean, when you enter an industry where there's a lot of people doing that same thing, I feel like you have to set yourself apart. We talk about your employee benefits business, right? And what you've done and how you set yourself apart and how you approach networking. So to me, the podcast that I have and the book that I've written, and then also being a commercial banker, it's about setting myself apart. So my initial pitch is always kind of my 7-second is like, hey, I've done what you've done, up to $3 million to $3.5 million of gross revenue. And I feel like it can help you now, having been a business commercial banker with businesses that go to 20, 25, 30, $100 million. I feel like I could be a great value to you, not just your banker for that you go day-to-day operations, but strategy to buy a business, strategy to buy equipment, strategy to buy commercial real estate. And yeah, that video was the other day where we visited this place, and I admittedly said like, hey, I don't have the vision, because when I see something dilapidated, I'm like, all right, well, just tear it down. Start over. Yeah. But I see so many people in the commercial real estate side of things with great centers of influence that I work with, that they have a vision. They could show the business owner. So it's cool. That's where you collaborate. I may be the finance guy, but they're the commercial real estate guy or gal, and they can show them how to uplift this piece of property and bring it to the right level. So,
yeah, and on top of that, you're almost everywhere. You start off saying our worlds get smaller, Alan Stern, and then we connected, and it seemed like other networking groups I go to, your name's being brought up. And it helps, right? So because it takes you from being, again, there's a jack of all trades, there's bankers everywhere. Same with insurance agents, we're a dime a dozen, right? And have to stand out. But if you show up everywhere and you're shaking people's hands with a smile, and a lot of times we're not bringing up our job, it seems to go over a little bit easier because, now we're different, right?
Yeah. No, I love it. I think ultimately, what's happened in the last 5 years, I think, especially since COVID, we can certainly stay behind the screen, right, and behind the mic and behind the phone or behind the email. But I think people are re-falling in love with that handshake, or heck, I mean, sometimes I'm pounding the pavement, knocking on doors, and just introducing myself. And I recently had a business owner say, hey, you're the first guy in 7 years that has ever knocked on my door. And I know I have a no solicitation on there, but I am proud of you for coming into my office.
Yeah, sometimes you just got to break the ice, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's we're human beings, right? I mean, ultimately, it's kind of like this podcast, like just getting the chance to be sitting next to each other. The energy's a little bit different, and the mood is trying to break through and share with you, great content.
Yeah, for sure. And so with your entrepreneur background, and obviously now you're working with a lot of entrepreneurs as clientele, what have you seen? Like, there's been a lot of changes that occur, especially since COVID. So maybe even from your position, not only just as an entrepreneur, but from a lending perspective, seeing growth, trying to reward for that growth through banking. Like, what are you seeing, like, trends just in the last few years, and maybe going forward that, some of these entrepreneurs, maybe they're doing something different, or insight that you have from your experience?
Yeah, I mean, look, I've had a chance now to, on the podcast side, interview about 200 business owners, small to medium size, from startup concept to I think the biggest one is about 100 million in revenue. And that's what I do on my, banker hat side is talk to businesses, typically 5 to 100 million, and trying to see where are the gaps, right? So some of the trends I've seen, obviously always dealing with regulation is a big deal. Obviously the tariffs, we're in 2025, new administration came in and shared their vision about tariffs and what that would mean around the world. So distribution, parts, things that come from overseas are being affected, and how will our clients, pivot and be able to either pass on that cost that they have, or how can they go internally here and start to rethink their supply chain, rethink their manufacturing, those types of things. So I think the trend is more about, people want to be entrepreneurs, but will they learn and work with the right team, right? You being in insurance, myself in banking and finance, and the right accountant or CFO or the right attorney, the right representatives at the table, I think is a major trend. And for small businesses, in my opinion, and I say this to almost every business owner I talk to, if you don't have an advisory board, which you may not think that as a small to medium-sized business, quote unquote, under 50 million or 100 million, that you don't need an advisory board, I think that's a big miss right now. And I'm going to be an advocate as I move on to be more and more sharing with business owners that advisory board is key. Because just like every major corporation has a board of directors, you need 4 or 5 other pairs of eyes. Even when you're doing 2 million a year, 7 million a year, 25 million a year, it adds a different aspect so that when you are always in and on the business, you can have some outside influence. And you don't always have to give equity. You can give like, hey, we're at 3 million, but if this advisory board I put together can get me to 10 million, maybe there's some equity play in that growth, not necessarily in the beginning, right? Stuff like that. So have you had much, in your entrepreneurship, did you bring in a board of directors yourself? Yeah, so I had a taste of it. It wasn't probably a formal advisory board. I talk about in my book that I had mentors, right? This guy, Jerry, was a big-time mentor, ran an organization called the Rhino Organization. So tough skin and a big horn in the front, running through things. A guy named Brian, too. So I had people that were influencing me as mentors, and I sat them at the table whenever I had businesses that I had. So it was an advisory board in that sense, but not formal. And I think one of the things for me that I want to do is formalize that a little bit more, so that the people that are on the advisory board see value and the business owner sees value. I think peer groups, Vista, and some of these other places, it's fantastic. They've done an incredible job. SCORE, which are retired C-suites and CEOs and owners of companies, is fantastic too. But I think this is a little bit of a missing ingredient within that small to medium-sized business. So when you a small and medium-sized business, when they're saying, okay, this sounds like great advice, let's put a board together, what does that look like? And so what are some things that businesses should look for when they're trying to put that together? Yeah, so in my opinion, a good size advisory board is like 3 to 5 people. It's going to be constituted of maybe one that's kind of in your industry, that's a senior to you, more mature in business. So maybe you've been in business 3 to 5, 7 years, but you find someone that's been in business 15 to 20 years and ask them to join the advisory board. Number 2, have guys like you and I that are in the professional space and services, so that if you do have a relationship with your banker, your insurance professional, bring them into that advisory board and have them sit with you once a quarter, once a month with this other group of people, and think about where are the gaps and things that you should be analyzing. There's so many aspects of a business: operations, sales, marketing, systems, SOPs, all these things that we talk about, funding. There's different ways to look at it. And when you have an advisory board, what happens is you may be tackling for the first quarter 2 or 3 ideas, right? And who can help you? Who can align you? Chapter 2, by the way, in the book, who can align yourself in those connections? And who can you get to so that person can help you go to the next step of what your challenge is?
So I know you had started when we were talking about this board that you don't have to always give up equity, but just to start out on some of these businesses because they can't afford to pay somebody a salary to be on a board. What do you recommend for like compensation for some of those times to at least get started?
Yeah, and again, this is a fairly new thing for me, so I'm kind of opening the lion's gate here. So to me, it's going to be from the point of where you're at to a goal that you guys all set as a board, right? And obviously an owner. Say something like if you're doing $500,000 in business, but they can help you get to $3 million. Something realistic. For $1 million business, finally crack the 7-figure. Can they get to $5 million? And these levels are significant. There's things that you have to do, certain processes and systems you have to bring in to either grow your demand, which could be marketing and those things that bring in more business, or the supply, right? Do you have enough people to service your service business? Do you have enough people to manage the SaaS? Do you have enough people to do the actual thing that you're doing, right? So structure in my mind's eye is that you would have these people come in and put some goals together. Look, we all love carrots, right? The figurative speech of carrots. You may not like actual carrots, but the what is it that it's in it for me, right? So each board member having a stake in the game, knowing that if we help this company get to X, that growth, there's going to be a percentage of that you agree on, potentially, 5%, 3%, 7%, 10%, whatever. And then some sort of structure where then now you are able to get that sweat equity, be able to come to fruition at that time.
I think it's definitely an awesome concept, right? And you're starting it obviously with the networking, right? And so you work with certain businesses, and even if you're not making a transaction right away, they might be in need of another service, right? And so you bring those people in, and that's one advantage of having these advisors. Could be also known as the centers of influences, sure. And so that way you could have all the tools at the table, and at the same time it's about paying it forward, right? And so one thing you've done to help pay it forward is create this podcast, right? And you've interviewed great people, and so share with our audience how you came up with the idea, came up with the title, and kind of like the background on what you're trying to do with that podcast.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. So, Go, which I'm an only child. I tend to run through walls and then go, oh, that kind of hurts, and not be the best planner. 4, I always felt like the number 4. I wore it in soccer and some other things. You touch all 4 bases and you hit a home run, right? The number 4 is simple, and then CEO. Right? I always felt like CEO has a cachet, wow, you're a CEO of a company, right? You could put a business card in. As soon as you put CEO on there, you walk a little taller.
Yeah, absolutely.
You feel a little bolder, right?
Yeah.
So, and look, there's a lot of people that have become CEOs of Fortune 500 companies and small companies and whatever. But that was kind of something. So the Go for CEO was the brand of it. And then I wanted to go and get people that were in this space of small to medium-sized business that may not have the name I always jokingly say of Mark Cuban, right? We all know who he is, and he's done a great job. But I don't necessarily need to have Mark Cuban on my podcast. I want to have Butch Zemar, right? I want to have, Alan Stern, who, the guy was working at a dealership, has an idea, and, creates a real nice business for himself. I just had a cannabis lady on the other day. That show will be out soon. She's 21 years old, working at an investment banking firm, watching TV and hears about the cannabis industry in 2014, and was the first Black woman-owned and youngest business owner in cannabis ever. And I just had her on talking about just the regulations and the paperwork that used to be and all that stuff, and it's so cool. So my vision was, go for CEO, go for CEO. Think about it, go for CEO. And it's about your life too. If you own your life and you have, faith, family, fitness, finance, and fun, right? Those F's are kind of the 5 F's I try to concentrate on. For me as a Christian, I think my CEO is God, right? But when you have your family and your finances and your fitness, think like a CEO. Like, what do I need to do? How am I assessing? Am I a little bit overweight? Do I need to get fit here? Is there a different diet I need to get on? Do I want to live for in my case, 3 daughters' weddings eventually one day if that I get to walk them through? So I'm always thinking about like, hey, where am I at? What am I assessing? And then aligning myself. And then, that's how the Go for CEO platform and brand became.
Yeah, and that's awesome. And I'm curious, what with the 200 plus interviews you've done on there, what would you call it? I didn't prep you for this, but what would be like the most unique business that you interviewed?
Well, this cannabis one was pretty interesting because it's the first one ever that I've had. One of my good buddies, Body Shop in Chicago, was another one that I'd known him for so many years, referenced to him in the book, been a great mentor, but I never knew kind of some of the intricacies of working with the insurance companies, working with an individual that comes in with their car. Trying to think of other things. I mean, I've had obviously insurance, and I had a mortgage broker in Australia that had a mortgage business, and they do mortgages different than in the U.S. I had a manufacturer's rep in Ireland. So instead of like Nike and Gymshark and those types of brands, he did kind of the off brands, and he built a whole business around that in Ireland. And it's hard when you're competing against Nike and Under Armour and all these, but he created a really cool system to do that. So yeah, it's been entertaining. So no one totally specific, but those are kind of some examples of things that I've interviewed.
Definitely have to check some of them out, especially the Ireland guy.
Yeah.
But, when you were talking through all that, you have a wealth of knowledge coming to the table because you own a business or sell a couple businesses, and then now you work with businesses on a regular basis. It reminds me of the guy that wrote 4 Hour Work Week. He did that podcast where he interviewed a whole bunch of Titans, and then he wrote a book about it. And so you obviously got a lot of experience. You're interviewing these guys, and these women that put a stake in the ground, and they're trying to grow a business, and they're all unique, right, in their own little way. Their personalities that come out, and it's a lot of fun, right? Go back to your 5 F's. A lot of fun to go through that entrepreneurship journey because everyone's a little bit different and they've had their ups and downs, right? And so, and you're trying to translate some of this back to a book, right? And so, and I know we began talking. It's not like the Bible of entrepreneurship, but you shed some light on some things. Can you give us it's not out yet, but it's getting close. And can you give us a little background on the book and what's in it so people could look forward to when it comes out?
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And yeah, I mean, learning how to market a book, promote it has been a journey in and of itself. Writing it, a couple of friends have asked me like, hey, well, how'd you start? How'd you do it? And I said, well, I just started writing stuff because I'm not a writer. Like I like speaking, I like talking, I like networking, but writing is a different style. And it doesn't mean that you have to be a writer, quote unquote. I didn't use a ghostwriter, so I could, claim everything myself. Which, I think ghostwriters are awesome because they have that unique skill set so that you can share your ideas and they can put it onto paper. But yeah, mine was a 2-year journey here. It's been almost 2.5 years. I wrote down all the things I thought about my uncle in Colombia, and the stories of me being 5 years old for the first time going there through 21 years old, and just seeing him and my cousins and how they lived their business. He was a Lions Club. It's called the International Governor. They sold the business when he had a stroke, and all my cousins flew into Colombia from other parts of the country and the world. And seeing that dynamic and stuff like that as a business owner. So I think ultimately the book is about a formula that is simple, right? With the number 4. The first chapter is about assessing where you're at. In the journey of writing the book, I thought to myself, I'm like, I've been an only child. I didn't have anybody to bounce off of, a big brother or a big sister or a little brother or little sister. My parents worked hard. They're middle class, lower middle class. And I kind of had to find things out. So I always thought to myself, I'm like, in business, I've had some failures and some successes, which is great. So what did I do? And in writing it, I said, I assess things pretty quickly too. Like, I started thinking if there's a situation that comes up with one of my commercial loans that all of a sudden hit a skid because an environmental wants to go phase 2 instead of phase 1, I assess that right away. Okay, hey, Mr. Business Owner, Miss Business Owner, here's what's going on. Here's what I need to do. Here's the cost that it's going to be. Here's how we pivot. You still have that closing date in 35 days. We can still get there. Boom. Let's start assessing, right? And then I align myself, in commercial banking or in my own business or in life in general. Man, your network is your net worth, right? But that's not just a saying. That's actually your net worth of context, your net worth of information, of value, right? I have a business owner that asked me right now, hey, what can I do, man? These premiums just went up 35% in my insurance for employee health benefits. I'm like, dude, I got a guy for you, man. You got to talk to my guy, Butch, man. He's going to share with you some techniques, some strategies. You may not even go with him, but I know Butch will share with you the right ideas, and hopefully you do go with him, right? So aligning yourself with the right people is the second chapter. Third one is taking accountability. Ultimately, every failure, every situation is my fault. I love Jocko Willink, his book, Extreme Ownership, right? And I didn't maybe do as good a job on accountability as he did in his book, but I just say, hey, look, accountability is about looking in the mirror, and then we go through the chapter of that. And the last one's taking action, because I've been to, on average, 3 seminars a year since I was about 21, and I've valued every single one of them. But I know that 75% of the time, I did not take action, right? I went to a cool rah-rah seminar, learned a lot of cool stuff. The speakers were so cool. I maybe even bought their courses and stuff. And unfortunately, sometimes, like a regular human being, I went back home, and a week later, I forgot everything. So I really push that last one, because if we could take action, hell, if I haven't taken action on 70% of the things that I've done, Butch, but I've gotten to a success level where I'm a multi-6-figure earner. I sold the business for multi-6 figures, right? And an exit. I'm not a multi-millionaire or anything like that. But in my own vein, I said to myself, you know what? I've got some success. I've had some things. I'm a father of 3 girls. I take action. That's the bottom line. And if I miss times of taking action, revert back to taking action, assess where you're at, align yourself with the right people and the values that you have, take accountability, and then take action.
Yeah. And that's definitely, I think it's definitely a good point, because you and I know entrepreneurs and business owners out there, they get stalemate and they don't take action. And you're like, and a guy like you that's been through ups and downs, you're like, but I see it. How do you not? So this is great. When does the book come out?
Yeah, I mean, we're early August. I won't put a specific date on it, but it's supposed to be early August. We were planning on late July, but we're a little bit delayed on some of the configuration of it. We certainly want to do things like this to promote it and market it. So it'll be early August. It's super exciting. Hopefully what'll happen is I've got a couple of speaking gigs for later in the year that are planned. So excited about that as well.
Awesome. So, when the book rolls out and I get a copy of it, signed copy, that is,
That's right.
We'll get you back onto the show. We'll talk about the book a little bit more in depth, and we'll talk about more entrepreneurs, spirits and acquisitions and things that you've been working on. So we'll get you back on the show. I appreciate the time that you spent with me today.
No, Butch, thank you so much. And again, this world is so connected. We've already discovered we're 6 degrees of separation from people, and we met a few times at a networking event. And now the opportunity to be on this podcast, you be on mine, other people that we know together be on each other's. We start to do the circle of trust, right? So.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the world keeps getting smaller. Thank you so much for that.
No, thanks, Butch.